Hello everyone. Hola a todos y todas. I hope you and your families are staying safe and healthy. My name is Genesis Sanchez Mendoza, and I'm the current Vice Chair of the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Justice Council at the Climate Reality Project. I'm also a Program Manager for the Scholarships and Grants Program.
Hi everyone, I'm David Jenkins. I'm the Chief Financial Officer for the Climate Reality Project and also have served as the chair of the DEIJ Forum in the past.
In this session, we're going to highlight some key DEIJ terms and concepts. By doing this, we hope to provide a common vocabulary to all attendees that can share when talking about the intersections of climate change, social inequities, race, class, and justice. As part of this session, we'll also address our organization's commitment to building a diverse and inclusive climate movement. To do that, we'll point out some of the steps we're taking in this journey to stand in solidarity with historically marginalized communities. Last, we'll talk about the importance of this training in the context of the historical moment we're currently living. With that said, I'm going to turn it over to David.
I'd like to first share with you Climate Reality's statement on diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice, which was developed to document and communicate how these principles should guide our approach to this work. At the Climate Reality Project, we are committed to building a more just and equitable world, one where all voices are heard and respected regardless of race, religion, color, national origin, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, age, or physical ability. We recognize that a diverse and inclusive movement is critical to solving the climate crisis, and that to build this winning coalition, we must ensure that those directly impacted, particularly those that have been excluded in the past, are at the center of this movement for change. While the climate crisis manifests on a global scale, we acknowledge that Indigenous people, low-income families, people of color, and other historically marginalized groups represent frontline communities who experience harmful climate impacts first and worst. To live our values of a truly sustainable future for all, we must commit to understanding and undoing the historical injustices which contribute to this reality and, in our solutions, address systemic inequalities. At the Climate Reality Project, we believe that equity, fairness, and the fully voiced engagement of frontline communities most impacted by climate change are essential components of any enduring climate solution, and that to solve the climate crisis, we must pursue a just transition to a clean energy economy that nurtures healthy and sustainable communities and ecosystems. The Climate Reality Project acknowledges that in order to create change, we must ourselves be open to change. As part of our commitment to growing a diverse and inclusive movement, we consider this statement to be a living document. We found that most people are familiar with the principles of diversity and inclusion, but not everyone has the same understanding of equity. So we wanted to clearly define this term to ensure that we have a common understanding. Equity is an approach based in fairness to ensuring everyone has access to the same opportunities and resources. In practice, it ensures that everyone is given an equal opportunity to thrive. And this means that the resources may be divided and shared unequally to make sure that each person can access an opportunity. Equity, therefore, is not the same as equality. Equity takes into account that people have different access to resources because of systems of oppression and privilege. Equity seeks to balance diversity. The key element here is access to opportunities and resources, because not everyone has the same opportunities or resources. This is why we can have a diversity of people in a group but still have vastly different outcomes. The graphic on the left depicts the status quo, the starting place where we find ourselves when we enter a space. We see here that due to the height of the fence and the slope of the land and the individual positions, not everyone here has the same access to view this sunset. So while they're all equal as individuals, they're not beginning with the same opportunity. Say we had 3 boxes to give the individuals to stand on. If we believed in equality, we'd give each person a box. But do they each need 1 box to see the sunset? Everyone would get the same thing, but does it resolve the issue? No, it doesn't. Equity says we don't give everyone the same thing. Rather, we strive to use our resources in such a way that each of them has the same opportunity to achieve the goal, which in some cases would mean an unequal distribution to match the particular circumstances. And in the graphic on the right, we see an equitable distribution of resources that results in everyone having an opportunity to view the sunset. So is equity the answer to all of our problems? Not exactly. In this example, we provided fair access to the sunset because we had access to 3 boxes. But if we had less boxes, we would have failed to overcome the barrier for all persons. Which begs the question, what's the real issue here? Why can't everyone see the sunset? Is it the boxes? Is it the slope? Or is it the fence? And here we understand the need for justice. Justice involves dismantling systems of oppression and privilege that create systemic disadvantages and barriers to people's ability to access resources and opportunities. Equity is about reapportioning or redistributing resources so people can access opportunities, but justice is about dismantling the barriers to those opportunities. In other words, equity treats the symptoms, but justice cures the disease. And both are important and should be pursued. Equity is necessary to minimize the negative impacts while we work to remove the barriers of injustice.
So in the course of this training, you will hear specialists, environmental activists, and grassroots groups talking about frontline and fence-line communities. Frontline communities are those that experience environmental justice impacts and the consequences of the climate crisis first and worst. As David said, these are often communities of color, people with lower income, those living in rural areas, or indigenous people. Despite their historical exclusion from decision-making and from public resources and services, frontline communities are regarded as experts in creating solutions to protect and preserve our air, water, land, and well-being. This is why their voices and leadership are so important to the future of the climate movement. Now, when we make reference to fence-line communities, we're specifically identifying communities that are next to a company, industrial, or service facility and are directly affected in some way by the facility's operation. Fence-line communities are impaired by air pollution, waste, food desert, and as a result are on the front lines, both of the climate change and also the pandemic. At Climate Reality, we say those close to the problem are also closest to the solution. Now, moving forward, discrimination against an individual can occur on the basis of race, sex, gender, religion, national origin, class, immigration status. Feminist legal scholar Kimberly Crenshaw coined the term intersectionality. Although the term originally accounted for the ways in which Black women experience the overlapping discrimination of racism and sexism, the term is now used to account the ways that an individual can experience multiple forms of oppression based on multiple identities. Simply put, Crenshaw is inviting us to think about how certain aspects of who we are will increase our exposure to discrimination, or even how our identity can grant us privilege. Another very important concept that is very relevant to climate action is self-determination. Self-determination is the people's right to determine their own future and the world they want to live in. That includes how resources are managed and how the community develops. We invite you to ask yourself, what kind of world do you want to live in? Acknowledging oppression, strengthening our understanding on how systemic racism operates, and actively committing to support oppressed, marginalized groups are 3 key steps to practice allyship. At Climate Reality, we're constantly reflecting on how can we be a better ally in the fight for climate justice.
So why is it important for all people of all backgrounds to show up in this moment? Well, it's because the climate crisis is also a justice crisis. We know that the harmful effects of the climate crisis disproportionately impact Indigenous people, low-income families, people of color. In this case, we're basically seeing more harmful climate crisis effects on people that are already suffering historical and present effects of racial and class discrimination on multiple fronts. So as a matter of conscience, how can we advocate for climate justice but ignore these other injustices? Well, the Climate Reality Project acknowledges that there is no climate justice without racial justice. And we state that by saying our movement is inextricably linked, and our mission to build an equitable and inclusive climate movement is only possible if we continue to fight for the health, safety, opportunity, and basic human rights of all people. So stand with us. The journey to implementing the principles of diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice requires us to discuss these topics with our neighbors and coworkers and friends and families. Here are a few of our Climate Reality colleagues to share with you some guidelines to make these discussions more productive.
We're so excited that you've chosen to join the Climate Reality Leadership Corps and train alongside passionate leaders from around the world. To honor the diversity of experiences and voices that we've brought together in this moment, we wanted to share a few ground rules that we use here at Climate Reality to make our conversations inclusive and productive.
Number 1, make space and take space. Those who speak often should make space for other voices, while those who are more reserved should participate to the fullest of their ability. Make sure everyone feels heard before moving forward, especially disproportionately impacted voices.
Number 2, speak from your own experiences instead of generalizing. Use statements with I instead of they, we, and you. Share from your own experiences and don't speak for others.
Number 3, seek to understand by practicing active listening. The goal of the conversation is to gain a deeper understanding. Remember to ask for clarity before challenging another's position.
Number 4, embrace productive discomfort. Some conversations require participants to lean into discomfort rather than attempting to avoid it. Keep in mind that these kinds of discussions are vital for change. While these are safe spaces, please speak with your mentor or group facilitator if you are feeling uncomfortable at any moment.
Number 5, initially assume good intentions. Attempt to assume the best when listening to others' perspectives rather than assuming the worst. Begin these conversations on a positive note to create an environment for open discovery.
Number 6, but remember, intent does not negate impact. A statement can be offensive to others even when that was not the speaker's intent. Acknowledge when your behavior has been offensive to a participant by listening to their response and accepting responsibility.
Number 7, disagree without discord. Disagreement is okay. We ask that you approach these unexpected ideas with curiosity and not argument. If you disagree, respectfully debate the person's ideas, but do not attack the person.
Accept that there is no quick fix. We can't expect to fully resolve such complex issues within a short meeting. Gaining a deeper understanding through these discussions represents progress.
It's everyone's job to ensure an inclusive space for discussion and learning. We hope you'll work with your fellow attendees to uphold these ground rules. From all of us at Climate Reality, thank you for your commitment to inclusion, respect, and justice.
I hope you find those ground rules helpful as you approach these discussions here and beyond. As we wrap up, we just wanted to share some additional resources that you can use to become more versed in these principles. There's some great articles and videos and websites that we've been using here internally to help us have a common understanding of these issues. And if you miss any of these references, feel free to reach out to us and we can share them with you again.
Thank you for being part of this movement. The climate fight is a fight for justice.